Idea Homeschool is celebrating 25 years of homeschooling brilliance. We are the largest homeschool program in the state of Alaska, with field reps and certified teachers located in 7 regions throughout the state. All here to support you, the one that knows your child the best. Our mission is to provide families with the highest quality educational resources, guidance, workshops, and encouragement so you can focus on creating the best individualized homeschool education for your child. You can find more information at ideafamilies.org. Welcome to the Voices of Idea. Welcome, families. Thank you for listening to this episode. I'm Lindsay, your host, counselor for Idea, and I have brought with me Lori Zulliger, a contact teacher from our Wasilla office, and we are going to talk about choices in homeschooling. And Lori, I am thankful because you have so much knowledge in this area, and I'm excited to learn more about all of what's out there in curriculum and why parents might choose certain options. So we're going to dive in, but first I want our listeners to hear who you are and a little bit more about how you got into homeschooling.
Thank you, Lindsay. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I just want to share, it was kind of a funny situation, but I was a public school teacher and I thought my daughter would be going to public school, and she did. She started off, but her needs were not being met. And for a lot of different reasons, we decided to homeschool, and I never regretted it. It's been an amazing journey. So since second grade and on, my daughter homeschooled all the way through high school, graduated, ended up being a National Merit Scholar, and I'm just so proud of all the options and the opportunities and the choices we had as a family, and that we got to spend those years together.
So needs were not being met, and you recognized an alternative way to support your daughter. Yes. How did you transition from classroom teacher to contact teacher with Idea?
Well, I was teaching for the Galena City School District up in Galena, and I came down to help write curriculum for the district for the graduation qualifying exam, and I was working with the homeschooling portion of our district Idea during that time, and I saw what was happening. I saw the community of learners, how happy the children were, and I just had never seen anything like that. So transitioning from a public school setting where I tried to create that environment within my own classroom but didn't see it in the hallways, to seeing it everywhere in this homeschooling community, it just made me want to do that too. And when my daughter's needs were not being met at the school, I'm like, why don't we just make that a choice? It's a big, huge choice. I swear I felt like I was jumping off a cliff, and I was a certified teacher. So I thought, we won't be able to, what if I mess up my daughter? I was really worried about it, and so was my husband, but we were like, we're going to make this commitment because we want to have the opportunity to make the choices. We want to be the ones to decide what she's going to learn and how she's going to learn and who she's going to learn with. And we knew what we wanted her to learn. And we wanted her to be a critical thinker, and we wanted her to have a lifelong love of learning. And in the end, we wanted her to be a mature and capable adult. And we weren't sure that was going to happen if she stayed in a brick and mortar school. So that was a huge leap, and we were so scared. But you know what? Idea is an incredible organization with all kinds of support staff, certified teachers, resource specialists, tech specialists, you name it, and they're all there to be the wind beneath our wings. So there was really no danger of us falling to the bottom of the cliff. We have soared and enjoyed this opportunity and have never regretted it.
So as you work with other families that are interested in homeschooling, what are some of the reasons you hear from them about why they are choosing it? Because I would say I'm one of those parents who fits exactly into your story in many ways, coming from public education to homeschooling education as an educator, and then also, realizing in one of my kids what the benefits of homeschooling can be. I'm just curious what other things you hear from parents about their choices in making the transition.
Oh, there are so many reasons, Lindsay, and from health reasons, whether that be emotional or just maybe just not good to be out there with other people who are sick a lot because of immune systems. The fact that the public school wasn't there meeting their educational or emotional needs, like what happened with my daughter, all the red flags were coming up. She started getting stomach aches, and she was advanced at the time and being forced to do curriculum that was way below her level, so she was bored. Safety issues, bullying. Parents just want more time with their children, like with us. My daughter just having to do so much homework and never having time to spend quality fun time together. Parents also oftentimes want to choose who their children are going to interact with. I think that's a big one, because when the kids get in those brick and mortar schools, the parents have no freedom anymore to choose what's going on. They don't really know what's going on in those classrooms, and they have no choice in the curriculum, and they have no choice in the politics and the budget and the ideologies that are being, given to the children. And sometimes the kids are just so unhappy inside that schoolroom. Maybe it's because there are too many kids in the classrooms. Maybe it's because somebody in there is really causing them pain or angst. They just have to get them out of there so that they can learn. There are just so many different reasons, and homeschooling is a wonderful answer if the parents are willing to put the time in to do it. It's not an easy gig, but you definitely have support to get through it and to make it a wonderful experience for everyone.
And when you mentioned that your daughter was a National Merit Scholar, I was just floored, because as a counselor, I know that qualifying for that is a very intense process. Not only having to be eligible off the PSAT, but the steps you have to take afterwards. And when you were saying your daughter was advanced throughout her early learning years, and then being able to transition that into the home environment, we don't know what that story would look like if she would have stayed. It just proves that there are some really great benefits to homeschooling in Alaska to support learners like her, or even those that are maybe below proficient. I'm wondering, because our state has so much flexibility in homeschooling as compared to other states where they may have stricter guidelines, what are some of the benefits of homeschooling in Alaska?
Well, to begin with, it's really helpful for the parents to be able to sit down with another person. We call ourselves colleagues, the contact teachers. We just like to come alongside the parents and talk about the child, the whole child, and what their learning styles are and what kinds of interests they have, because that we always want to learn what we're interested in learning, but not necessarily what we're not interested in learning. So that's a really good place to start. And the level, we don't want our children to be too challenged, but we don't want them to be bored either. We don't want anyone to waste their time. So we help pinpoint exactly where those children need to be to best suit that child's learning. Parents have the ultimate choice, and then we just help the parents navigate their way through the paperwork that the state requires and all that. And if any learning challenges come up, we address those. And it's a journey. It's a journey. And, a child, you might be just going along just great and everybody's learning fine. And then all of a sudden the child's needs change. And so we can change. We can adjust and change along the journey, just like if you're following a roadmap and there's a detour. It's fine. And we just navigate our way till we get to that end. And we do know how to get children to the National Merit Scholarship point if that's something that they want, if that's something that they're capable of doing. It is, like you said, there is a lot to it. And I don't know if anyone could do it on their own. It takes a village, but we all help each other and get to that point where parents have that ultimate control of where their children's going to end up. So in the end, it's not just about the higher standardized scores that children can have going through a homeschooling program because their needs are getting met. They're really, truly learning. colleges want these students. They're really well prepared for the world. Education is not just about a data dump. With homeschooling, families are invested in creating mature and capable adults with the goal of creating a lifelong love of learning in their children. And we believe at IDEA that parents know best on how to develop their children through this process to adulthood. We revolve around the concepts of trust, independence, and freedom to choose.
The community that surrounds homeschool families, when there might be areas of a learner where either the parent or the contact teacher may not have the most experience in, but they know somebody who has gone through that ahead of you. I think that's what makes IDEA's community so great, is because the longevity of homeschooling in our program, somebody is going to have the answer.
Absolutely. So many of the people who've been hired as part of IDEA have actually homeschooled their own children. We have field representatives who are there as an advocate for the families, and we have the parents and who are actually homeschooling in the moment. The contact teachers are constantly learning from other parents, and we're always drawing upon each other and getting ideas. We just really want to provide opportunities for the children, and we want to follow their own curiosities. I think if we can allow children to speak up and say, I want to learn about dinosaurs, or I want to learn about, spaceships, or whatever it is. And because it's not necessarily always about what they're learning. It's the fact that they're learning how to learn. And they're learning that there is so much to learn. And they're just connecting those brain synapses and getting fired up. And one parent said it one way to me. I loved this. She's like, I do not want my children to nibble at their plates. I want them to devour the whole plate. I love that, because instead of just nibbling at their education, just around the edges and throwing the peas down to the dog under the table, they're actually devouring everything on their plate and wanting more. And that's the goal, is to get our children so excited about learning that they'll learn despite anything we put on their plate. It just really empowers children to take an active role in their own education.
Exactly. Let's dive into a little bit more about learning and creating that love of learning. How does homeschooling allow a family to do that with options that are available within using the allotment that's given to a family?
In IDEA, we believe that parents know their children best. Each child, being a very unique and wonderfully made individual, will have their own talents, their own challenges. Parents can address their children's individual learning styles with the curriculum that meets their specific needs. There's just so much curriculum out there. Millions of people in the United States homeschool, which means there are thousands of vendors out there offering curriculum that will meet their children's needs. There are so many teaching methods too, different ways to teach that curriculum to their children. And it's a process of learning how our children learn best. So while our children are learning how to learn, the parent teachers and the contact teachers are learning how that children learns. So we're all learning together.
And I think that's where the learning assessment that we have on the website is valuable, because if you do have multiple kids, a one-size-fit curriculum may not work for every child. One might be more of a visual learner as opposed to kinesthetic. And so knowing that about your child, you can piece together different resources and support that so that each one excels in the way that they're designed to learn.
Absolutely.
So there's textbooks, there's online. What else is there for options?
That is the most exciting thing about homeschooling. When we get back to learning styles, there are basically 3 types of learning styles. There's the visual, which we almost always see all the time in everything. It's the printed material, charts and graphs, what you normally see in a public school. Then there's the auditory, learning by listening. And then there's the kinesthetic, which there are more of us than you would believe really need that hands-on learning. So the hands-on learning can be given to a child with purchased boxed kits. You can get science kits where everything comes in there to do that science experiment. You can get kits for cooking. You can get kits for history. You can do lap books where kids do research and they make these cool little books. There's all kinds of hands-on learning experiences and then real-world experiences. I know a lot of parents who teach their children how to fix a car, and they use the car to do it. There are all kinds of learning experiences that are just real-world and hands-on. Another way, what we did with our daughter when we were homeschooling is I loved social studies. I loved learning about history, and I loved doing it through historical fiction. So we would get these wonderful historical fiction novels, and we'd read them out loud together as a family, and then we would discuss them. We would talk about how they tie into past events and current events, and a huge critical learning kind of activity for my daughter and for all of us. And I loved that. So open discussions are a way. Field trips, the parent advisory councils, the PACs in each region create monthly field trip opportunities for students in IDEA. And of course, parents can use their allotments for admission to museums and the zoo and any kind of learning centers that, here and anywhere, in out of state even. There are local classes. Oh, there are thousands of people in Alaska that homeschool. So knowing that, then that means you have thousands of vendors, people like rock climbing gyms and teaching pottery classes and teaching writing workshops to children. There are many opportunities to learn besides just the textbooks and the online. And one more way it's kind of popular is parents creating co-ops. Cooperatives are when parents each say, well, I know how to teach clogging, and someone else says, well, I would like to do some novel reading groups, and another parent says, I love science, I love everything about science. Another parent says, I want to teach art. So everybody comes together and decides what they want to teach, and then they teach it. And whether they do it all the same day, like a lot of co-ops like to say, well, let's just take a Friday. And we have families, that are aged from little kids all the way through high schoolers, but we can offer different classes and different things, and kids can fit into those throughout the Friday, and we just meet every week, and we just have fun with it. Or the way my co-op worked when I did it was we would just have certain times set aside where the kids would get together, because we were a neighborhood co-op, and the kids would just all come over to my house on a certain day and do my thing. They'd go over to someone else's house on a different day to do that thing. And so just depends on the families and how they want to set it up, if they have a friend group, or if there are also a few co-ops in Alaska that are bigger, that are set up for anybody. You can come and you pay a fee, but you also have to be a parent who will be willing to teach something too. So it's still a cooperative, but it's bigger. And then another way that parents can choose to have their children learn is through something we call dual enrollment. Dual enrollment can be done at a private school where students take a few classes at a private school. It can be done at a public school where students can go and maybe they want to take chemistry because parents don't want them to blow up anything in their own kitchen. So they take chemistry over at the high school. And you can also have this students take sports at the local high school, or sometimes there's a theater opportunities, being in a play, or maybe jazz band. Some of them will require allotment taken from their funding, and some of them will not. So you can talk with your content teachers about that. They can also dual enroll at the college. So like I said, my daughter taking quite a few. She was actually a sophomore by the time she started college. And some students even get their associate's degrees by the time they start college. So it just depends on the goals of the family and the student. Dual enrolling with a elementary school and middle schools are a little more difficult because their schedules are not as set.
You had mentioned about private schools being an option for dual enrollment. I was wondering if you can clarify what private school options look like.
Well, most of the private schools in Alaska are of a religious nature. They're offered at a church, and the state has come up with new regulations that allow the correspondence schools to be able to pay for some of those classes if they do not contain faith-based content. So that's a new thing. So that is an option, and the parents can also choose to use faith-based materials within their courses that they choose. And their children get credits, whether they're in elementary or high school. They still get credit for the faith-based curriculum. We just have to follow the state regulations, which state that students need at least 2 secular core classes and 2 electives on their learning plans before they could get their allotment. So the contact teachers help the families work through all that. But yes, you can use your faith-based materials even in the 4 core classes that you're normally used to using them in. And we will help the families be able to receive their allotment and meet the educational needs of their children.
You know what I found energizing about what you talked about with co-ops and parents teaching different subjects that they're really good in is homeschooling allows almost everybody that's involved in teaching the child to show and give their strengths. And I think that that's different than public education, where a teacher may be given a class that they may or may not like teaching, want to teach, tired of teaching, and that energy comes through in how they deliver lessons. And in homeschool, I don't know how that's really possible when you're excited to teach as a parent, you're excited to learn as a family, and then you have other people in your community supporting it who are just as excited about what they're teaching too. That's how the love of learning is established and creates a solid foundation for the child.
That is so true, Lindsay. That is true. I remember that as a classroom teacher. The more I was excited about teaching something, the more fun we all had.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
that's
I
good.
think that leads to opportunities at our region centers as well, because then that love can come into the office and students can come up with their own ideas of things they want to learn, like Lego robotics or
Mhm.
sewing, or create potentially student-led options as well.
I think that's the beauty of homeschool right there. We have the freedom to choose, and we can go off of what gets us excited, what gets our children excited, where our values lie. Comes into play in so many areas of our life, and I think it just is empowering to not only the students but to the parents too, to feel like they are out there making a difference in their children's lives, not just trying to get them through something, but actually making the experience valuable and fun and engaging and something that's going to stay with them for the rest of their lives. It's funny how many children who've been homeschooled actually grow up and start homeschooling their own children. And it's really cool. I have some of my homeschool students that are now parents, and I have their children now, which is pretty cool.
It makes me very honored to be a part of the staff, because as I meet people and learn about ideas, values, like the longevity of homeschooling educators and families, an idea is a solid foundation that welcomes more and more into the community. And I see the support and I feel the excitement everybody gives to new people. And there isn't a feeling of nervousness, or, I mean, that might be there, right, as like a homeschool parent coming in, but I hope that, and I know that when they go into our offices and meet our contact teachers, everybody has the same value and mission that they want to serve the family. And that comes through with everybody I've met so far.
That's so true. You know, Lindsay, in IDEA, it feels like everyone's voice is heard. It doesn't matter if we're novice just coming in, not knowing what homeschooling really is, or if we've been independently doing it for years before deciding to come alongside our support team. Everyone adds value to our community. I've never seen anything like it. I feel like I'm in a bubble, a
I
beautiful
know.
bubble.
I haven't either, because I feel like in some situations there would be a hierarchy, and there's not. It could be you've been on, part of it for a month, or like you, 22 years, and the feeling of welcomeness is no different. And you're
That's
right.
right.
I feel like that is a bubble and really unique.
I think in the end, we just have to remember that our children are our most precious commodities. They are what we care about, what we worry about, who we want to take care of. And with homeschooling, you have choices. to do that the way you see fit. And you have people to help come alongside you, take that leap and soar. All it takes is a little courage.
Before you go, I wanted to ask you some 3 fun questions that we ask at the end of the podcast. And these are our go-to questions. So I was wondering, what is your favorite go-to recipe on a busy night?
Lindsay, my go-to recipe is leftovers thrown into a tortilla called a taco. Put a little salsa on anything and it tastes good.
Okay, what is your favorite go-to fast food menu item?
You know, it's really fun to have one night a week where you just don't have to cook. We used to have the pizza Fridays where pizza movie night. And whether we went to the fast food restaurant to get our pizza or we decided everybody gets to pick whatever topping they want and we throw it on a bubbly.
Love it. And I love that you incorporated it as a family movie night.
Yeah.
That's like when you think about childhood sometimes it's memories like those that stick. And what is your go-to homeschooling resource website?
I would have to say that Kathy Duffy's website that goes into explanations about thousands of curricula choices would be my go-to. If I'm not sure if a curriculum is faith-based or if it's going to cover a certain grade level or how it's even addressed or what the values are that comes out from that curriculum, I go to Kathy Duffy's website and she has wonderful reviews.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to make sure that that website is notated in the resources part of the show notes. Thank you so much for sharing your voice with the Idea Homeschool podcast.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. It's been a joy.